Can you all see my screen?
Mhm.
Okay, so individual development plan is the official name for this process, but it is a kind of we call as a goal and planning sheet because we kind of make it a very simple form for undergraduate and graduate student. Otherwise, this official process is taking so much time. What we learn from graduate mentoring from where I have another role, they don't like when it is too long. So we make it very short. Okay. So I share this detail from the email. So what your role is, it is only 2-page documents, okay, with a few sections. One is research plan and presentation goals and career development goals, okay. So use that template. I provided like a sample answers too. Just fill the blanks. No need to write more than one and a half page, okay. This just make sure that your research know by your graduate student who is helping you and as well as your faculty member. Okay, draft that sheet and share with your graduate supervisor as well as with me. If you're feeling hard time to complete that form, we can work together. I can have like a 1-hour meeting and we both can work together and fill out that form. Okay, so after you fill that form and share with your graduate supervisor, have a short meeting, like 1-hour meeting with your for example, if Shara is Odelia, and have sit together and go over all the plan. Then your graduate student know, okay, I'm doing this research because I'm going to the medical college, so I need to have something from that work. Okay, purpose of this one is mostly undergraduate student contribution is not officially recognized sometimes. So sometimes they are not very well recognized in publication. If you do this one and discuss about authorship and how it's going to be done in the beginning, it will help you in the longer run. Okay, so have that communication during that meeting as well as in the BPRI, we have memorandum of understanding. That's mean what is your expectation as an undergraduate student. So go over that with your graduate student as well as read through the lab guiding principle. Just it's a quick read. So read both one and get the signature. After that, when you have the meeting, sometimes this what you write about the research plan may change. Sometimes it's not change. If there is a change, please change it together with your graduate student and send the final version on May 5th. Okay, it is a very simple task, only have 1 or 2 pages. One reason, if you do that, this will help you to have a kind of plan when you can finish the training, and this is the skill set you are going to achieve by the training. Okay, so before going to the official session, please use this QR code and go to the handouts in this folder. I think it will work for everybody because the case study that we are going to discuss, you can have access to there. Okay. Did everyone have access? I make it everybody to give me a thumbs up if you can access to this one. I can copy and paste the link too. Okay. Okay. Next is how to become an effective team member. I need to tell you a little bit short story before that, why we plan to do this. Okay. When you're working with the teams, there are problems comes. We realize in sometimes in BPRI, we are so much focuses on research, we forget this basic principle to get kind of in our mind what is the group work means. And sometimes it's go to the very bad situation. We can have argument and people make misunderstand it like that. Then Jenna and me discuss, let's have very short session to everybody when they join. Think about what is teamwork mean and what is the culture mean, what is the good communication mean. That's the purpose. It is not saying that you wanted to do this way. It is just trying to review what is good team member mean. Okay, so the first one is because I teach the leadership classes 3 years in when I'm doing PhD. I noticed that people are working as a group or a team, but it's very less people know what is the difference between group and team. So I am putting a poll for you guys, whether you guys knows what is the team and group. Read these two definitions and answer one. What do you think? What is the scenario A is a group or scenario B is a group? Or scenario B is a team or scenario A is a team? If you know the difference between group and team, you can respond, okay? So read two definition and try to distinguish what is the group, what is the team. Okay. Okay, the poll. Okay, the correct, I will relive the correct answer. Okay, scenario A is the group, scenario B is the team. So 75% get it correctly. Okay, so the difference is in the scenario B team, we have a common purpose, common expectation, and we make ourselves accountable to achieve that. In group, you have your set of kind of assignment, you do that, that's all. Okay, so when we are thinking about the BPRI, we are doing interdisciplinary project. That means we are connecting 2 or 3 areas together. In that case, we are most likely want to be a team rather than a group because it connected to each other. In here, when you're working with a team, we need to be collaborative. Okay, that's mean first thing we need is collaboration. You need to value and relating to each other. And the building consensus. Sometimes in the group, we want to say, okay, my research idea is best than another person. Sometimes we have that kind of feeling. But in a team, we are not going for a win or lose. We are going for something that both agree. Okay. And then next one, I want to emphasize that when it is team working and collaboration, we are trying to make a new framework. That's depart from your own framework, but it's contribute to more than what you can do as an individual. Okay, that's the one thing we need to remember. Another thing is in the collaboration, we always forget when we're doing research that there are human inside our lab. We work with human and they have feeling. So when you're working with your graduate student, you have to understand them, get to know other best. That's the best thing to do, the first one. And also you have to share your responsibility and accountability. That's mean when you give a task that you are responsible to do that and the other student or your colleague, no need to tell you one step by one. When you get the responsibility, you are doing that. And also always, especially if you are going for an advanced level to develop your own project, then you wanted to get help from your faculty member, graduate student, and your team members in your lab. So in that case, you to create a common goal for the research. Sometimes your part is a very tiny part from the whole big grant. So that's the important thing to remember, that we need to connect with each other. And another one is, I'm going very quickly because you have handout, you can read that and learn that. I need to give more time for the teamwork that we plan to do today. Okay, so how to be a good member. These are the characteristic of the good member. You can recognize that they're committed to team, flexible and engaged, reliable person, and listen and being respectful for the people. And most importantly, they are very communicative and recognize and acknowledge what they are wrong. This list is in your handout. You can read that. And also I share this, save a copy of this presentation. You can refer back to that. So the next one, I need to review something about what is the constructive and destructive behavior within team. That's mean if you're doing one of this destructive behavior, that's mean you need a little bit improve and go to the other side to be a constructive member and be cooperative. Don't try to be dominate. And sometimes you rush because you're doing so many coursework, taking 18 hours credit work, kind of that. Then you're trying to rush your experiment. That may affect to the whole experimental quality. So be clarified things, be patient, and harmonize things like that. Okay. So the final slide that I have before we are going to group study, what is thriving work environment? Why I'm giving this definition is because you guys work a lot in your coursework and you come into the lab as a part of like 9 hours per work. Okay. In that case, it not should be make you more stressful than your regular life. It should be kind of environment that help you to learn much and do something pleasure to you, not like it is, oh, another research, I need to do another assignment, oh my god, this is so stressful. So that's why I say if you're thinking about the lab environment, you have to look for that environment that you feel like you're contributing your ability and you can achieve your full potential. So this is a definition. If you want to look for a job after your graduation, look for an environment that people talking about this kind of thing. I listed another factors in each one that contributed in thriving work environment. You can look it in the handbook. This is just what I wanted to remind you before we are going for our team activity. Okay, this is not a lecture. This is just to like brushing up your kind of memory about what is a good team member before we go into the case study. Okay. So in that link I provided earlier, please go to Dream folder and open the handout one. In the first, you find this case study. Okay, I modify this one from the field guide for team science one. Okay, so as we have like undergraduate and one graduate student and everybody, we can take roles each one, or we can have 2 groups, or we can have undergraduate 1 group or something like that. First, you have to read this study individually, and then as a group, discuss your initial reaction to this case. And think about guiding question that written immediately after that case study, and write your responses as a team and report back to the whole group. Okay, so I will create a breakout group because we have 8. I think we can split into the 4 people. I will make Jenna to one group and me to one group just to make sure that we have balance, and you can discuss and share your response. And we will take around 10 minutes to review this case study and follow up with this question. And when we come back, we can share. Okay, I will make a breakout room quickly. Hopefully I can make it. Mm. Okay, please join the teams. Maybe they have quite in-depth discussion. Okay, I think everybody had a nice discussion. I think our group too had a very nice discussion. So I will go with the Jenna's group. Sorry to say Jenna's group, but just to convenience, I say Jenna's group. Can somebody share what you guys discuss? Any strategies or anything that Joan can do or Sally can do, Brian can do to improve this environment?
I'm going to see if one of the students would be willing to share a thought from our group.
Yeah, that would be great. No need to be exactly what you discuss. You can just share whatever comes to your mind. This is just informal. No correct answer or no wrong answer.
Was that Brian could, because it says that Brian and John were pretty close when working together in the lab. So he said that Brian could bring up, like, during the meetings with everyone, say something like, oh, John had this good idea when we were talking one-on-one. And I think he should elaborate a little bit more on it now.
Thanks, Angel. Anything else that you all thought was a great idea from conversation?
We also noted how Sally was actually more involved in the lab, so it could be beneficial if Sally became friends with John and started interacting with John, so John could feel more comfortable with speaking his own ideas.
Thanks, Alexander.
So from the other groups, so
Sure. So we all kind of talked about how something similar. So like Sally should definitely be inviting towards John and maybe make an effort to invite him out, if not with the other graduate students, maybe together, just so he doesn't feel intimidated. And maybe, or is John the undergraduate? Maybe I'm.
yes.
Yeah, okay. And maybe Brian, his graduate student, should talk to him one-on-one about why he's feeling shy or maybe intimidated.
Anyone, Tamir or Delia, need to add something?
I felt that, wait. No, Sarah said it pretty well. Yeah, like not Sarah. It is Sarah. Is Sally. Like Sally's also an undergraduate researcher, so I thought it'd be important for her to kind of be like some kind of an ambassador to John, and if he's feeling uncomfortable, like Sally can be someone that John can look up to in the lab because they're kind of in a similar role. Like Sally should be someone that should be easy to talk to John because they're in a similar role.
Oh, Delia, because you was a graduate student and you had some suggestion, I would like you to share with the whole group.
Yeah, I would say maybe first there should be a conversation between the undergrad and the graduate supervisor, but really in one-on-one and not in front of everyone, and just get to know the person, why they are that way, and not make any assumptions, and then ask, what can I do to make you feel more comfortable? But also do not press anything, do not try to rush, or it can take time. And so us, like, here we know that John had a kind of a bad experience before, so that's also his personality, and we should be okay with having shy people and less extroverted people, and just make everyone feel comfortable. and yeah, have a very honest and kind chat with him and saying that could serve you in your future to build your social network and yeah, just being kind, I would say.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think rather than I expected, it went very well. So I got the ideas that we can do if we have, because in the next fall, we have new trainees for the FIS program too coming on. So I purposefully designed this one and took it a little bit to the match to our scenario. Then you get new student, how you can helpful to them. And also I thought like some graduate student come here and they will understand what expectation that you guys would like to have them. So I think everybody enjoyed that. This is just a hypothetical scenario that made up with a previous kind of a case study from that book. It is not real scenario, but the lesson that you learn from that, the suggestion that came from each one, please have a mind in your thought, and this can be done, and you can speak up, or you can speak to somebody who are in same level or graduate student that you are working closely and make things better. Don't ever try to be like in scenario without talking and sharing your feeling and being introverted. It is okay, but share your feeling with at least somebody you trust in your group. Thank you. I hand over to Jenna to talk about more about culture.
Okay, thank you, Tanya. I do have some slides, but I also want you to know that it's going to be super just informal. I hope it is more like a conversation. Can you see my screen? Okay, wonderful. So I always find it helpful just to think about when somebody's teaching, like what is their context, what information do they bring? And so this is not super important, but I thought I would share my background. I'm actually a cultural anthropologist, so I spend a ton of time actually thinking about culture and how different cultures are interacting with one another. I also am in an assistant dean role here in agriculture and life sciences, and so I see kind of conflict sometimes will rise to the occasion of my office, and I spend a lot of time doing like mediation and trying to help students understand team dynamics. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I teach culture and diversity for one of our departments. And then I, of course, get to hang out with all of you in the BPRI. So I want to build on Tanya's conversation today about teamwork and collaboration. And she talked a lot about the good things, right? The really positive ways for us to engage in teams and in groups. But I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that can get in the way of that. In particular, I want to talk about like miscommunication or misunderstanding, where culture is at the root of some of that, cultural differences. And so I'm going to show you this short little video. I think it's like 2 minutes long. Let me know if you can't hear it. Good.
Oh,
Jenna, I think we can't hear it.
You can't hear it?
Hmm.
Okay, I think it's okay. Just to watch it. We'll just keep doing it this way. Okay, so hopefully the sound was not required, of course, to hear this. But I want to talk a little bit about kind of the underlying message here. And of course, this is about cookies and a train station and one person's perception of what belonged to them and one person's perception that was based on faulty information, right, about how someone else was behaving. And I wonder if we try and extrapolate this and think about the spaces that you're in, how could misunderstandings like this arise in your labs, where there is one person who has one perception of reality based on faulty information in some cases? How could these kinds of things crop up in your own spaces? Does anybody have examples of that?
Yeah, I could share a potential situation that could happen in my lab. For example, we have a daily feeder for the colony. And let's say I need my grasshoppers to be fed with wheatgrass, but I see that that person did not give them wheatgrass, but only lettuce. I could be mad, but then actually I'm missing the information that we had no wheatgrass left. So maybe sometimes when you don't have all the information, you make assumptions, but actually you have to see it from also the other's perspective. That never happened, but that's just all I can come up with.
Yeah, I think it's a really good example. You know, we live and we work in these really complex environments where things are happening all the time. People are making rational choices based on the information that they have. But I think kind of like in this particular video, there's an idea in social science that's called in-group, out-group bias. So when you perceive somebody to be in a group to which you belong, you treat them a little bit differently than when they are in your out-group. You know, we saw this older woman, she sees this young kid, he's got his earbuds in, he's like got rock music on. And so she immediately starts to question his judgment. You see it the first time she sits down. She looks at this guy and is already not impressed with him. And so I think the same thing can be true in our spaces. Like when we have different groups to which we belong, we are often, our kind of mental mapping is encouraging us to support the people who are in our groups and not to support the people who are in our out groups. And so what are some of those groups that you experience? We talked about one of these in Tanya's first case study scenario.
So the question was maybe what kinds of groups do you give certain, like maybe the benefit of the doubt to, and others you immediately just try to kind of take the pressure and take the blame and give it to them?
Yeah, exactly. Like, are there kind of obvious identity groups in your spaces that might create some of the same bias?
I think so, like maybe like specifically in a lab, maybe if you're working closely with on a project with 2 or 3 individuals, you guys start sharing the same needs, kind of like what Odelia said, like you share the same kind of frustrations. And so maybe anytime somebody does something that either feeds that frustration on accident, you just immediately want to kind of put the blame on them. Whereas like maybe you guys do something maybe just as bad or even worse and kind of just kind of let yourself go and it's fine. You never take responsibility. So I think this happens kind of, I guess, in every sort of group or any category, not just in a lab, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. It's a great point. I mean, what Sarah is speaking to, I think we see all the time. Like, I never, trying to think of a good example. I am not a football watcher. I am not a basketball watcher. But when you turn on the final game of the college NCAA series, I am like 2 seconds in and I've already chosen a team and I'm feeling really strongly about that, right? We're constantly trying to align ourselves with people. And so maybe it's the undergraduate students that are grouping up together, and maybe it's the graduate students, and maybe all of you are grouping up against the faculty. And so when frustration starts to come our way, we usually will lean to these biases. We'll figure out who's in our out group. And the question becomes like, how do you make that decision about who is in your group and who is out? And so we don't have to answer this, but I think in this case, what could change if we expected the best in people? You know, if this older woman in the video had not sat down and immediately started to question the judgment of this young man, she would have been slower to anger. What happens if we give others the benefit of the doubt? So what we're really going to talk about today in our last few minutes is culture. An invisible and often unexplored root cause of poor communication, I think, is a lack of cultural competence. I know that for all of you at your institutions, there are people from cultures all over the world. And so we can think of that global definition of culture. We could think about individual subcultures for our identity groups based on our gender, our race, our ethnicity, our sexuality, right? There are all these different ways that we identify. And each of those groups comes with its own subset of cultural values. I won't get into this, but I think it's helpful to know that scholars are thinking about this actively. How do you become a better intercultural navigator, so to speak? when you're in these intercultural teams, when you're traveling and doing work globally, like there are actually dimensions that you can start to work on and build to get better at that. And so today is just a first touch on some of these ideas. Anthropologists love to think about culture, and I am certainly in that group. I think culture is helpful. My favorite definition of culture is this. I teach my classes this definition: the learned shared understanding among a group of people about how to behave and what everything means. And that everything is really important because you are steeped in a culture even before you're born. They know that babies come out of the womb and their vocal sort of machinations are different based on the language and culture in which they are born. And so babies from France cry differently than babies from China. And so that's pretty incredible, right? We're already being shaped even before we're born. And so we come to every single situation that we're in with some context. And let's talk about where that could go wrong when we're working in teams. These are just a few examples that I wanted to share today. But sometimes inconsistent cultural norms will be at the root cause of our lack of good communication. So for example, the body language that we bring to an interaction, others are judging that body language based on the culture in which they were raised, right? And if it's different than ours, it's sending us a different signal. And sometimes we're not thinking about what that means. We're thinking about the emotion that comes with that disjointed experience. The way that we think about authority, right? We are in this crazy hierarchy and people have different kinds of education and different titles. What is the expectation about authority? So Brian, from the last example, and John were dealing with this particular issue. You know, John came from a culture where he was meant to listen and not necessarily to contribute. And that was creating conflict in their work environment. Gender equity is a huge one. And for all of these, I could give you some examples, and maybe I will, but I'm going to ask you to think about ways that maybe some of these issues have played a role in either conflict or group dynamics that you've been a part of. Social practices, and this could be things like religious affiliation, our expectations for who can marry whom in a society, and then all of the feelings that that is rooted in morality is a really big one in international teams. Communication style, language, employer-employee dynamics are part of that. And so I want to ask you, do you have any examples where some of these things have been at the root of group dynamics before? I can give you a few examples to get you started. How's that? There are several examples that have come up here in my current work environment. So I have a little team of graduate students. They happen to be very international. And so sometimes I see the way that their cultural dynamics and their cultural upbringing has really shaped our daily interactions. And I had a student, actually two different students who are working on my team once upon a time. It was a couple of years ago. And I as an employee love creativity. I love it when somebody says, here's a problem, go and figure out an answer for it. And so I said, this is a creative exercise. Like, I want you to think out of the box, go to the drawing table. And they both came to me about a week later and said, hey, in Chinese culture, bosses they dictate exact problems and exact ways to start developing solutions. We don't even understand this language. Like when you say this is a creative exercise, what are you trying to tell us to do? Right. So that was a big one. And it was a point of conversation that we had to have in order for us to both feel like we were coming to a good resolution. They needed to share with me that they wanted a little bit of direction, and I needed to share that I want a fresh perspective, right? So that's one example. I had another friend, a very, very close friend. He's one of my best friends in the world now. He's from Uganda. We worked together for a while. And one day we were talking about our family, our upbringing. And he said, yeah, one of my moms does this, and the other mom does that, and my third mom. And he came from a family that was polygynous, right? Polygamous. He had 3 mothers and 1 father. And you should have seen the room. It was like a vacuum. All of these other people in our space were just wide-eyed. They didn't know what to do with it, because we come from a relatively conservative, religious, like kind of evangelical state in the US, where that is absolutely not okay. And I saw his interactions with people shift after that conversation, because people didn't know what to do with that sort of, or their perception of the morality around that question. 2 examples, but I wonder now, do you have any that you could share?
I have an example, but I will be quick.
Okay.
So my first language is French, and usually when French people talk, especially on the phone or in emails, we always sugarcoat everything. And I'm not from France, but people from France usually do that even more. Like, to write just a very simple email to ask one question, we write a whole paragraph. And when I first moved here, I never learned that actually here people go straight to the point. And at first I really thought, oh, like that person is mad at me, or maybe I didn't do everything correctly, or why are they being so cold with me? And it took me some time to learn, oh, that's just normal. And in French, we always use more words than we should. So, and I learned it was not personal.
I love that example. Gosh, it's such a good one. There are all these scholars who talk about different cultural contexts. I've got one more slide to show you after this. But that's one of them, Adelia, which is this idea of like low context cultures and high context cultures. We are a very like to the point, get the product done. We've got a deadline, don't have time for extra words. And if you come from a place where the foundational relationship is more important than the thing that results from the conversation, it's offensive. It can be really jarring to you. Thanks for sharing. Are there any others?
I have a quick one as well. So I'm an undergraduate, and another undergraduate just joined our lab this semester. And during one of our meetings, my professor, the faculty member, she was like applauding me for like finding my own like little research area based on I want to go to dental school. So I was able to find something relating to BPRI and microbiology and dental school. So she was applauding me for that. But the undergraduate, the new one, came to me and she was like, I'm really struggling. I thought I was gonna like kind of just get assigned something, and I didn't realize like our professor had like wanted us to have such like a creative role in finding our own thing. So we kind of differed in that, like your first example.
Yeah, that's a great one. I mean, we are setting expectations for each other all the time. And if we're not willing to talk about what those expectations look like, we will disappoint each other, right? Because my definition is likely going to be different than your definition. So this is just one more cautionary tale to say, there's more at play than just the words that we use, right? We are steeped deeply in these cultural traditions that we come from. And so how can we give people the benefit of the doubt, and make sure that we're understanding and trying to work on our own intercultural competence. There are a couple of theories. We don't have time to talk about them today. But here, if you want to, I guess I'll share this PowerPoint with you, Tanya. And these are things that people they often use. We don't use them as much in anthropology or in cultural anthropology, but a lot of people will use these as these kind of broad stroke binary, like how are cultures different from one to another? And so it might give you something to think about as you're considering your own group dynamics. That's it for me.
Thank you. We are on time. So just before going, I want to remind one thing. I thought like getting 1 minute from you guys is better than sending another email, ask you to fill out the form for the next meeting to check the availability. So this is the Google Doodle poll. You don't need to complete now, but just when you leave the meeting, before you get off from your seat, just fill it out after you can get your calendar and let me know your availability for the next meeting. So the next meeting will be how to read a research article quickly. And this is focused on improving your, like you have to read a little bit some research when you go into the advanced level of your training. So this helps you to reduce your time taken to read an article properly. After that meeting, we are going for another one on what is the product, kind of what is different between posters, conference poster, presentation, and what is the journal article, kind of that, how the author role of authorship is decided, kind of that is the next month. So for the next month, reading article, then the following month, it's about the authorship and the research product. Okay, so the next month speaker will be Brittany from the Angels Lab. So she will share about that, how to read a quick research article. She's teaching that course, so she volunteered to do that. For the next one, I'm trying to get an expert from Texas A&M. She's my committee member. She's very good, popular person. So let's try to get her. So thank you for attending today. And please, before you leave your chair, complete that the Google Doodle poll. Then we can schedule the next one. Hope you enjoyed this session and not putting another straight to your life. Thank you. Thank you very much for everybody who joined.
Thanks for having me. Have a great
Thank you,
weekend.
Jenna. Thank you very much.
Bye, Tanya.
Bye. It's